Hear what I feel.
I work, I sing.
So
Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com. A few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to go to Steppenwolf Theater's rehearsal space and watch a rehearsal and get some previews for an upcoming show that's going to be on the main stage starting November 7th and running through January 5th called Lindaway. And it features five-time Grammy Award-winning musical group, the world-renowned Ladysmith Black Mambazo. But the other cool thing is it also features two very well-known names on the jazz and blues scene here in Chicago. Frank Russell on bass, and also he's the musical director, and Buddy Fambrough on guitar. So we had the opportunity to sit down, talk to members of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, Frank Russell, and Buddy Fambrough about their experience with this new performance and some of the challenges, but also just kind of get a preview for what people can expect to hear when they go and see this show. So first off, let's kick it off with the musical director and of course the first bass player, electric bass player, to ever be on the cover of Chicago Jazz Magazine, Frank Russell. We are on location here at the Steppenwolf rehearsal space, getting ready for the new show, Lindaway, coming out. It's opening November 7th, and I think you're going to recognize this gentleman here, Frank Russell. He is the musical director on this show. He is in the pit. He is running the music to this thing, and I just got a preview of it. It's incredible. Of course, you remember him from being on the cover of Chicago Jazz Magazine a year and a half ago or so. So, Frank, first of all, I know when we talked in the feature interview, you had quite a relationship with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. You were in one of the shows with them, and then all of a sudden, so many years later, you get the phone call, and now you're doing this show, and it's opening up at the Steppenwolf. How did this whole thing come about?
It's amazing, because when I did the interview with you last year, I had no idea they would be calling me back 25 years later. Like, I felt like Al Pacino, they keep calling me back. But yeah, I got an email a couple of months ago, and I thought it was a joke. I said, well, maybe this is from 1993, but they didn't have email yet. So
It's like a time warp.
Yeah, so it wasn't a joke, and they asked me would I like to join the cast. And I've seen my brothers from Ladysmith over the years at least 10 times, and never thought they would put together another show. But the director, Eric Simonson, who got me in the first play at the Steppenwolf Theater, it was called Evelyn and the Polka Kings, in '93, I believe, called me to do the Ladysmith gig, No Matimba, in 1995. And we, like I said, we ran all over the country, Kennedy Center, Boston, and they put me back at the Steppenwolf, and I'm so excited, and it's an honor, and especially to be band leader this time, not just the bassist.
I just heard Sweet Home Chicago, and of course you're going to see some of that on some of our preview things, but it's incredible. And
Yeah.
I mean, what's it been like to kind of combine both styles together?
It's been so beautiful, the whole experience. We didn't know a lot of this was going to happen. Eric, the director, he asked me, how do you think you could put the blues together with South African? I'm like, well, let me think about that. And so we just came up, I did the blues, and then I put a South African thing on top of it. And as soon as we started playing, they started dancing, doing their Scott Tamia dance. And it just worked so beautifully. I got a little emotional about it because it just came out of nowhere. And pretty much a lot of the things that are happening, and them singing on the blues and Zulu, it's something I never thought of would happen. And of course, my Mambazo told me, they said, well, Frank, this music comes from us. I said, yeah, that's true.
Now, when you were putting the music together, I mean, you're making me think, I mean, was there a score? Or is
No. The music is mostly from them. I helped with some of the transitions. Eric wanted me to put together a lot of, I listen to so much South African music over the years. And of course, I listened to their Graceland album.
Yep.
And I pulled from some of that stuff, and I tried to mix. I did the best I could with playing the South African music, not being a South African. And I got the greatest compliment a couple of days ago. Albert, one of the founding members, came up to me and he said, Frank, the band was talking, and we really love how you're playing, and you play like you're from South Africa. So once again, I had to walk away. This whole thing has been just an emotional roller coaster. Well, but mostly going up.
Yeah, right.
Never down.
Yeah.
And so that was the highest compliment I've ever gotten, except Stevie Wonder last year told me he loved my bass player. Remember I told you that?
Yeah, I know. I remember
So
that.
this
That's a
is-
pretty good compliment
That's a,
too.
that's
I
a
mean,
big
you know,
one.
just
That's a
throwing
big
that out
one.
there.
All I need is Paul McCartney, and I'll have the trifecta.
Then it's over with.
Then it's
That's
over.
it. It's always great to sit down with Frank Russell. And, you know, I know he mentioned it a little bit, but just to kind of clarify, he's actually on stage throughout this show. There is not a pit. So the musicians are not down in the pit. They're actually up on stage part of the show. So if you go to see this musical November 7th through January 5th at Steppenwolf Theater, you're going to see Frank, Buddy, the cast, Ladysmith, Black Mambazo, all together on stage performing. It's quite a scene. I cannot wait to see it on the main stage. So we ended up sitting down with Buddy Fambro next, and we talked a little bit about some of the challenges that a guitar player jumping into something like this, where it's a brand new performance, brand new musical, might have, because not all the music is written out. So he's kind of working out his parts and figuring it out, especially with all the different styles that are mixed together in this incredible show. So let's take a listen to what Buddy had to say. And we were sitting here probably with a familiar face to most jazz and blues fans in Chicago. The great guitarist Buddy Fambro is here, and he is part of the cast, I think, slash band. Frank Russell just sat down with us and talked a little bit about that, but now he's coming from the bass angle, and I was very curious, and I'd love to hear your take on this. What is it like combining blues, Chicago blues style music with Ladysmith, Black Mambazo, South African music, putting them together? Actually, I just saw a preview of this. It actually makes sense and actually sounds incredible, by the way. So what's the process been like? I mean, you've had to learn some stuff probably that you're not used to playing on a regular basis on your guitar, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, very much so. Me being a Chicago native, I grew up with the blues, so that's very natural to me. But the South African syncopation and where one is, that it gets a little hairy at times, but I'm learning. It's a work in progress. But they're both traditional folk forms of music, so that they share that in common. And so it's very interesting.
Is there, I mean, the blues, everybody thinks of the blues, 12-bar blues, 3 chords, all that stuff. Now, what I just experienced downstairs, and Frank told me a little bit, a lot of the music Ladysmith, Black Mambazo wrote or put together, and then you guys are also playing along and adding things to it.
Right.
So how have you had to shift a little bit? Because it's not like, I don't think, there's not a traditional score, I don't think, that you're working off of, is there? I mean, you're kind of putting things together as you're hearing it sounded like to me.
Yes, that's correct, and it's it's fluid. Things change day to day, but they have an idea normally what they want to do. A lot of times their harmonies are worked out. They use very traditional cadences, 1, 4, and 5 chords, but usually in 1 or 2 bar bits phrases. Whereas, you said with the 12-bar blues, it's 12 bars, so that's a big difference. But they have their conception, and then they'll give us ideas. We want you to play, they'll give Frank a bass line, they'll sing it, and then they might have little ideas for me to play, and they'll sing that. There's very little chording going on. It's mostly single lines. That's another big difference between that folk music and the Chicago blues.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because I mean, just listening to the preview, were you shocked at how well they meshed together on some of this music? I mean, meaning like, Chicago blues that you just played Sweet Home Chicago, and Ladysmith, Black Mambazo was singing along, and then it went into another style, but it was still that blues style. I mean,
I'm not shocked.
Yeah.
Good musicians and good music, you could put together just about anything.
Yeah.
So that's not a worry. It's just being on the same page together.
Well, I remember, we played many years ago a couple of, I think, Navy Pier gigs with Skinny Williams, man.
Joe's Bebop.
Yeah, I remember walking through the crowd playing on tables. That's a story for another time.
I was playing banjo. Yeah.
But you've always been able to just fluctuate between styles and all that stuff, and I think that's one of those things. I mean, when you listen, if I remember correctly, your last recording, I listened to it. I think we reviewed it in the magazine when we had the print magazine. You always mesh different styles, so that must have been something just you grew up listening to all the different styles, and you were probably influenced by a lot of different styles. Because I would consider you as like a straight-ahead jazz guy or a straight blues guy. I mean, you incorporate everything. Is that because you were influenced by so many things when you were growing up?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. It makes it more fun for me.
Yeah.
You know, I never wanted to be in one lane so much. You know, sometimes they can be a detriment. You know, you confuse an audience. You know, they want to hear one thing that they think you're into, and then you throw them something else.
Right.
It becomes a challenge. But yeah, that's what keeps it interesting for me.
That was fun because I had not seen Buddy in a couple of years, and I don't think I've ever interviewed him. So we're going to have to do more of that. And yes, Buddy and I, and even Frank, played at the old Joe's Bebop Cafe on Navy Pier back in the day. But that's for another segment, another time. And we'll talk all about that some other time. But last but not least, I had an opportunity to sit down with two members from Ladysmith Black Mambazo. They have a very long, rich history working with Steppenwolf Theater. And the fact that they're back in town after a long period of time is pretty exciting in itself. And plus, I learned a little bit something because they talked about some of the history of the group and why the group got together initially, which I thought was fascinating. So let's take a listen to my conversation with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. It's an honor to be standing here with two of the members of the famous 5-time Grammy Award-winning group, Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Spoonson, yes.
I was close. All right. And Duane. All right. Yeah, all right. That's good. I'm already into the game now. Now, it's interesting. We talked a little bit before we started rolling, and they were both in Chicago in 1995 when you guys coordinated with Steppenwolf. And that was the second time Ladysmith Black Mambazo worked with Steppenwolf Theater. And now, all the way to 2019, you guys are back in Chicago previewing a brand new show. I just heard the previews downstairs, and I was trying to imagine blues and Ladysmith Black Mambazo coming together. When you were approached about this show, were you trying to imagine the same thing? I mean, because you wrote a lot of the music. The group wrote a lot of the music, so what was the process?
It wasn't difficult, but it was it has some challenges because there's two different styles of music. But we were able to get it together because, as you know, music is able to get in everywhere and it can connect everybody.
So I have to ask. I mean, until this show came about, did you ever listen to Chicago blues music? I mean, was that something that you guys were familiar with?
Yes, we listened to the blues.
Yeah.
In 1995, when we were here, we used to go to the blues club, and also where I went to in New Orleans, I played the New Orleans blues. So we are familiar with the blues.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I find interesting, and I want to get into the process of you guys composing some of this music, but since we're talking about the blues, and we're talking about like Ladysmith Black Mambazo music, to me, it's very spiritual. It's very, I mean, it's all about love. It's all about like, telling a story and everything. And it's a lot like blues. When you think about the blues the same way, when you guys started writing the music and putting it together, is that something that you guys thought about, the similarities between the two music and the similarities of what the compositions were?
Our main concern when we write music for Ladysmith is to keep our traditional music, because when my father formed the group in 1960, his aim was to promote this kind of music, to be able to put it on the world stage so that it will work with other music. So for us, it's best to bring us and then meet up with you and make that collaboration, so that we have that connection. We don't want to sound like you. We don't want you to sound like us. We want you as you are, and we want to come as we are, and then we meet in the middle, and then we come up with something.
That's interesting, because I never thought of that. I've never heard anybody explain it this way before, but it makes total sense, because when you think about everything that Ladysmith Black Mambazo has done over the years, that's exactly it, right? And that was the whole purpose when your father started the group,
yes,
to get that music out.
To get the music out, to promote our music, promote our country, and show people that we are. Because at the time when they started, it was a difficult time, the times of apartheid, where people didn't think anything would come out of South Africa because of the situation it was. So work very hard to make it so that people can see that we are also the same as other people. We are the same as you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. That's great. So, talking about this play now, when you guys got together, you coordinated with it's the same director that I think that you guys worked with back in 1995, right?
Yes.
And when he came to you with the concept, what did you think about the concept? Because it's a very interesting concept, but I mean, when you're just talking about it, you're like, I don't know what's happening. So, what was your thoughts?
When we got the script 6 months ago, we read the script. We were late a lot with this play because we also have people that we love, and we also have the people that we lost. Like in the Mambazo, as you can see in the story, it's about love, and also there's some difficult parts that is happening in the story, sad part. We also have sad part where we lost some members of Ladies with Mambazo, and Stephanov as well has lost members, very great members. I remember one guy who was a stage manager, we used to work with him a lot. So there is that kind of connection, there is that kind of relation. We relate a lot, so it was easy for us to write because there's so many things that are very similar that is happening here in Stephanov and also in us and in the Stephanov. Because Stephanov is like our second home now. This is our third time working with Stephanov, and this is the only theater that we've worked with in terms of a play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, thanks to Steppenwolf Theater, thanks to the cast, everybody that was there. It couldn't have been better. I cannot wait to see the performances kick off. They start November 7th, run through January 5th. Steppenwolf Theater will link everything up below. And hopefully, I will see you at one of the performances. And if not, as I always say, hopefully